Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to my next 2024 presidential election prediction video. Today we're going to be doing an updated look at an updated prediction for a matchup between incumbent President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. And I believe this is the most likely scenario to occur for 2024. I believe that Joe Biden is going to run for re-election and that Donald Trump is going to win the Republican primary, but there is a chance that Biden does decide not to run for re-election, or drops out of the GOP primary, or even loses to Ron DeSantis. But as it stands right now, I do believe this is the most likely outcome, and I do think that this is what we are going to see, just under 2 years from now. Um, but before we get into it, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I wanted to go over some more, channel-based news. So a couple days ago, I had a poll for you guys, and this is just to, a little address. I'm sure most of you know about this right by now, but I had a poll on my community tab, which was sent out to you guys, and it was basically asking you guys which 2024 Senate race do you guys want me to make a video about first. I put up, five of these states, and these are not the only Senate races that I will talk about. Obviously, there are more contested races, and, we got 2 years, so there's plenty of time to go over these races, and I just wanted to get kind of a quick jump start on it, and I'm sure I'll be making updated videos about some of these races as we get in later this year, and potentially definitely next year. But I put up Arizona, Michigan, Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia. These are all Democratic-held seats. Kirsten Sinema, is an independent here, but she caucuses with the Democrats, so that's technically still a blue seat. Nobody got 50%, but Arizona and Montana clearly were the top two choices, so they went off into a runoff, and which I made about 2 days ago. It says 1 day ago, but I think it was really 2 days. And Arizona narrowly won the runoff. Just to make sure you guys know, for these kinds of polls, I am going to be putting, I am going to, give you guys about a day and a half to fill these out before I make an official prediction. And of course, I posted a community, I had a community post yesterday, which basically just updated you guys on the runoff because, I didn't want to put it in the comments since you guys probably wouldn't get that announcement. But yeah, so Arizona will be the first Senate race that I make a video on. But yeah, I just wanted to get that little news out of the way. And now let's go on to the actual prediction. And, we'll talk a little bit about how Trump has been improving his numbers in the GOP primary. He is still, in a bit of a tough spot against Ron DeSantis, but he's doing better than he was, a month ago. If you go back here, you would see in most one-on-one matchups, DeSantis and Trump are neck and neck. Usually, Trump loses to him. If you look at this Suffolk University poll, which came out in December, it showed DeSantis leading by 23, which is really eye-catching, and kind of made a lot of people, including myself, come to the conclusion that DeSantis was now the favorite to win the GOP primary. But he has still not announced his bid. Trump, of course, announced back in November, just a couple of days, I think, before my last prediction. Yeah, it does. I think that there is, a problem for DeSantis, that if he does not get into the race soon, I think that that is going to, push a lot of people back to Trump because, and, definitely if the vote is split between DeSantis and some of these, other candidates, like Nikki Haley, who I think is, who looks like she's going to run, Mike Pence, I don't know if he'll run, but, either way, if the vote is split between anti-Trump candidates, that could give, that could create a problem for the GOP because just like in 2016, Trump could get by without majorities of the vote, and he would get a plurality of the vote, and if he wins, if he that works to his advantage, and in most of the key states, that could end up propelling him to victory. Now, I'm not trying to say that Donald Trump can't win in 2024. Joe Biden is still a pretty beatable incumbent. His approval rating. Let's pull it up right now. Actually, I'm not super updated on it. He's still disapproved of by 11 points. His approval was improving, just a couple of weeks ago. It's not terrible. It's not like it was back in the summer, but it's still not ideal. And, I think, Trump on the other hand, Trump is a very weak GOP nominee. He won in 2016. He, lost the midterms in 2018, which, was expected, for a president, to be, to get a shellacking, or for his party to be, shellacked in the following midterm. But he lost in 2020. Sure, it was by less than expected, but then he cost Republicans this midterm, against Biden, an incumbent who did not who had one of the worst approval ratings, in modern American history, for a president. And so I think that it shows that the Republican Party needs to get their act together. They need to start nominating more moderate candidates, and I think it also shows that, they've turned off a lot of moderate voters and just, a lot of people in general who may not be satisfied with the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, but are going to vote for them against a Republican because they don't trust the GOP to do it any better. So now we'll get into the actual predictions. So we're going to start by filling out these safe states for Joe Biden and Donald Trump. These are going to, these states have, no chance of going, to the opposition party. Many of these, are pretty self-explanatory. They'll vote for either, they'll vote for Biden or Trump by over 15 points, or around there. Sometimes I'm not exactly sure if a state will cross that threshold, but I'll just put it as safe. Just to be. Just for the sake of it, because I don't feel like putting it in the likely column. A couple of these notable states that I will mention, one of them is Colorado. Now, Colorado has, used to be a swing state just a couple of years ago, but since 2018, it's really taken a massive shift to the left. Democrats, won the governor's race in 2018 by 11 points. They flipped, the Denver seat, and the Denver suburbs are really is what has been driving the state to the left. Joe Biden then, won the state by 14 points in 2020, and Democrats did really well in Colorado this year. They won the Senate race. Michael Bennet won the Senate race against Joe O'Dea by almost 15 points, even though O'Dea was supposed to be a moderate Republican who could, who was described as someone who could potentially win this race. I personally didn't think he was going to win. I don't think many people did, but I did not expect him to lose by 15. And Jared Polis, definitely helped Bennett by, him winning by 20 points. Um, you know, but still, Colorado is definitely a state that is left trending. It trended left. Even O'Day, someone who I think was a better candidate for Colorado than Trump, still underperformed Trump's 2020 performance. And Democrats did really well in the House race this year too. They won. I think it was five out of the four. Let me think. No, six out of the three, because yeah, Colorado, I think, or no, five out of the three. I was right, because there's 8 congressional districts here. They won the eighth district, which was an upset. Yadira Caraveo won this race against Barbara Kirkmeyer. They almost knocked off Lauren Boebert. This district was made more Republican than its predecessor, and I understand that Boebert is a was a very, or is a very extreme politician, definitely dragged down a lot of people, or dragged down I guess was dragged down by weak Republican performances at the top of the ticket. But the fact that Adam Frisch got this close, it is pretty surprising. So I think that overall, when you see all of that, when you see how blue Colorado has become, I think that I'm very confident that Biden can win this state by over 15 points. Another notable states, Montana. Republicans didn't do too well in Montana last year, but they did all right. And I think that there's a chance that John Tester helps Democrats, in other races like Biden. John Tester is the incumbent Democratic senator who's going to be in a very heated battle for reelection, for his Senate seat. I currently think he's going to lose, but again, I think that it's going to be a pretty close race. He'll outperform Biden for sure. I think Trump, he won it by 16 points in 2020. Montana to some degree is left trending. Ryan Zinke did not do very well in the first congressional district, but I think Trump, will probably win the state by, around 15, 16 points like last time, although I wouldn't be shocked if it fell beneath 15 points. And then one last state, I guess I can point out, South Carolina. This state could be under 15, I think, especially with the Democrats moving their first, moving, making South Carolina their first major, their first primary state. I think was a smart move. Because it is a more diverse state, but it is still a very red state. Still, is going to vote Republican no matter what. And I think Trump, if Biden's, numbers of black turnout decrease enough, I think that it could be under it could be a safe margin. It might be likely. I don't know. I'll put it as safe, just to be cautionary. And then New York, this will be closer than 2020. Republicans did phenomenally in New York in 2022. But once again, Lee Zeldin was a uniquely strong candidate. Kathy Hochul was a very weak Democratic candidate. And I do expect Biden to win the state by under 20 points, but still over 15. So now we've got quite a few toss-up states. Not all of these are necessarily say not all of these are necessarily super close, but they're not safe. We're going to start off with the likely states. Joe Biden is currently at 191 electoral votes. Trump is at 116. And so we'll start off with the likely states. These states aren't necessarily guaranteed for either party, but they are, states that I would say are pretty solid for them nonetheless. I think that they are very likely to go in a certain direction. They're going to be between 5 to 15 points, so it's a big scale. It's a big range. Some of them will be very close to being hyper competitive. Some of them will be very close to being safe. So we'll start off with Donald Trump's likely states. The first one I'll give him is the state of Alaska. This state has become increasingly more democratic. Trump only won it by 10 points in 2020. And Biden, he had a respectable performance in Alaska. And Democrats, of course, Mary Peltola, is the current congresswoman from the state's at-large congressional district. She succeeded Don Young after his death last year. That was a really, good result for Democrats. And I think it proves that they can win should they fund, if they have a really good candidate. But I think that the thing about Alaska is that while it's left trending and while, it's probably going to be, I think it'll be the closest election result for, the closest presidential race in Alaska for, in decades, in this matchup. Alaska, Mary Peltola is a very unique type of Democrat. Her victory was very much impressive, but Sarah Palin was a very weak GOP nominee. And, I think Peltola would have won against Nick Begich. And, Peltola is a very unique type of, Democrat. She is a moderate. She is pro-gun. She is pro-fish. She is, not someone, as she said, she is not someone who's beholden to the national party. And I think that Biden being a nationalized figure will drag him down here, but I still think he will improve off of his 2020 numbers. So Alaska is going to be competitive in the future. Most likely, but I don't think that this is its time. Although I do think Peltola will win her reelection to the House. But again, lots of ticket splitting, and how we have to examine all of the factors of her candidacy, her being a really good candidate, and Palin being a very bad one. Not that Trump's a good candidate, but still, we have to examine all the factors, to make a conclusion. And I don't think that Biden is going to win Alaska. The next likely state for Trump is Kansas. This could be safe. It's practically safe, but the Kansas City suburbs are drifting so far to the left. Sharice Davids won her reelection in the third district by 12 points. It was a massive margin. I expected her to win by 4 or 5. She ended up winning by 12. Laura Kelly won her reelection. And governor's races are obviously not are not nearly as correlated. Are not very correlated with national races or federal races. But still, I think that Biden, he did 6 points better than Hillary Clinton in the state in 2020. And I think he's going to, lose it by like 12 or 13 this time. Trump is not very popular in the Kansas City suburbs. And it's a left trending state. It's redder than Alaska, but I'd say Alaska and Kansas are very similar in terms of their leftward trends. Although I just think Kansas, it'll become competitive in the future. I think that I can see Democrats potentially making it a battleground, in the next 10 to 20 years, 15 to 20 years, I'd say. But I don't think that this is the time. Now we're going to go off to the Rust Belt, where I'm going to put Iowa and Ohio as likely red states. I think that these are two competitive states, quote unquote competitive states. If depending on your opinion, I don't think that they're safe, but I, don't think Biden has a chance to really win these. Um, but I think these are two states where Trump is going to do better than 2020. I think in most states, in most battleground states, he's going to do worse. Not Lena, Ohio. But I think that these states are very right trending. Trump is really good with the white working class in these states, and they are just are perfect breeding grounds for the new Republican Party. Um, they're pretty much, these states are prime examples of the Rust Belt being good for Republicans in the future. I think Ohio, yes, Tim Ryan and Democrats had a really good performance here in 2022. And I think Sherrod Brown is going to do very well in compared to Biden in 2024, although I do still think he will lose. Um, but I think Trump wins Ohio by like 10 or 11, up from his 8-point victory in 2020. And I think in Iowa, even Tom Miller, the Attorney General of Iowa, someone who won by a landslide in 2018, he still lost his reelection in 2022 by 2 points. So, I think that really, and Sydney Axne lost her reelection against Zach Nunn. So I think that that just really shows that Iowa is gone for Democrats. I think that Trump wins it by like a Chuck Grassley margin of around 12 points. Now we'll go down to Florida. I think Florida is a likely red state. It was really good for Republicans in 2022. Marco Rubio won his reelection. He beat Val Demings by 16 points. DeSantis won his reelection by 19. Republicans swept most of the House races. They almost even won a Biden plus 14 seat down in Miami-Dade. So that just really shows how well how strong, how unusually Republican the Sunshine State was this last year. I don't think that Trump is nearly as good of a candidate for Hispanics as DeSantis or Rubio are. But I do think that he is going to improve off of his 2020 margins. I think he'll flip Miami-Dade, although I don't think he wins it by 10. And I think he'll do better, in Palm Beach. I think he flips a couple of counties. And I think he ends up winning it by 9 or 10. I think that Florida, won't be super Republican. It will be, more. It won't be as nearly as Republican as it was this past year. I think that that was just kind of a sign. It was kind of like the worst case scenario for Florida Democrats, at least for the time being. And I think Trump is. I think with in a presidential election year with higher turnout, I think that Biden will do better. But he still won't win it. He won't come all that close. In the final likely not really state, but the final likely, you know, district, I guess, for Trump is Maine's second district. This is traditionally a very blue collar rural part. This is the blue collar rural part of Maine. Has an incumbent Democrat, Jared Golden, who's very very right wing compared to most Democrats in Congress. I wouldn't call him a right winger, but compared to the National Party, he is. And Trump is very popular in this district. He won it by 7 points in 2020. I think he wins it by a bit more this time. And yeah, I think that that's what's going to happen. For the likely Democratic states, I guess we'll start off with Maine at large. I think Biden does better here. Janet Mills destroyed Paul LePage in that race, won by 13 points, which was shocking to me. I thought that LePage would lose by like 6 or 7, but he ended up losing by almost a safe margin. So, very, very impressive performance for Maine Democrats. I don't think Trump will lose Maine by 13. I think he'll lose it by like, 10 or 11. But I do think, he'll do worse in the first district, but, which I think, they have a larger population than the second. So, yeah, I think the way to think about Maine is at large, it'll be better for Biden, but in the second district, it will get more Republican. Going to New Mexico, there's potential for Hispanic trends to help Trump here, but I think that overall it's not. I think that DeSantis would do better than Trump here. I think he's got a better appeal to Hispanics, even though Trump is has had impressive did have an impressive performance with them in 2020, but New Mexico. Even Mark Ronchetti couldn't get the governor's race within 5 in 2022, and I think that that kind of shows that New Mexico kind of has potential for Republicans in the best case scenario, but Trump is not the guy to do it, and I don't even think I don't think DeSantis is either. Um, yeah, New Mexico probably, I'd say it's, an 11-point victory for Biden. It's, virtually, I think it'd be virtually the same, as it was, 4 year in 2020. Nebraska second, this is Omaha. This is a pretty left trending area. Has a Republican in Congress, Don Bacon, who I think will lose re-election, but he will definitely outrun Trump. I think, this district's very swingy, which means if we get a good environment for Trump, he could potentially come pretty close in it. But, he's a terrible candidate for the suburbs. Biden won this district by 7 after Trump won it by 2 in 2016. So I think, it'll probably, be like 7 or 8 for Biden. I think it'll be, it'll be a solid, it'll be a very good performance for Democrats in this district. Minnesota, this state, is kind of interesting compared to the rest of the Rust Belt. Working class voters in Minnesota are a lot more Democratic than they are in say Iowa, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. But and I think that the Minneapolis suburbs, they're trending left, and I think that they're going to be fairly solid for Democrats. Against Trump, I think that Biden will flip a couple of narrow Trump suburban counties down here. And Democrats in Minnesota had a pretty good performance this year. Tim Walz won the governor's race by 8 points. Angie Craig won her reelection by 5. By almost 6, I think. In the second district, even though the Green Party, sorry, not the Green Party, the Legal Weed Party had a candidate there. And I think overall Minnesota is going to be, like virtually the same. It'll be like a 7 or 8 point victory for Biden, like it was last time. Virginia, I know that Glenn Youngkin had Glenn Youngkin did win the governor's race in 2021, but it's a different, we have to understand the governor's races are very different from Senate races, or from, federal races, Senate races and presidential races. And even though, Republicans did, pretty well in Virginia this year. Jennifer Wexton only won her reelection by 7 points. Jen Kiggins defeated Elaine Luria, although Abigail Spanberger did hold on. Um, but even though Republicans had a decent year in Virginia this year, they still lost the House popular vote by 4 points, which is or 3 points, which was pretty much the same as in 2020. And so I think Virginia is not, the suburbs, the Northern Virginia suburbs, of DC are, they're good. They were good for Youngkin, and I think they'd be good. They'd be decent for DeSantis, but Trump, really showed, Trump, has proven that he is not a good candidate for those areas. They trended left, from 2012 to 2016. They trended even more left from 2016 to 2020, and I think that those trends would continue. I don't think that I think that there's a difference. I think that Glenn Youngkin was a unique candidate for Virginia, and also the fact that it was an off year in a governor's election with a lackluster Democratic candidate in Terry McAuliffe. So I think all of that put together makes the case for Youngkin to, win, a race, maybe another governor's race. He can't run in 2025 because he's term limited, but, I think on the federal level, Virginia is still very much a blue state. And finally, New Hampshire, I think, will be a likely blue state. Maggie Hassan won her reelection here by 9 points, which was very surprising. I, thought she would win by, 3 or 4. But, she even outperformed Biden, which was something that I did not even see, when, after, Bolduc won the primary, when, I had the state as a likely D. I thought that she would win by, like, 7 back then. But I think that Republicans in New Hampshire, I think a lot of people, think that New Hampshire's kind of gone for Republicans no matter what. And, I wouldn't say that. I think that, New Hampshire is more anti Trump than it is anti Republican. We saw that Chris Sununu won his governor's race by, 15 points. And I know that that's, once again, governor's races do not equate to federal races. But I think that when you're looking at New Hampshire, yes, it's pretty much a big Boston suburb, but I think DeSantis, has a good appeal to these kind of, to these very, these very to this socially liberal but fiscally conservative state. Although Trump, I think, he is not a good candidate for New Hampshire, and he's proven that. He proved that in 2020. I think that he would lose it by 7 or 8 points. So now we're down to the most competitive states. These are the highly contested races, pretty much the same as in 2020. We have Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Biden is at 226 electoral votes. Trump is at 179. So now we're going to go into the lean states, which will be decided between 1 and 5 percentage points. Not necessarily the most competitive, not necessarily toss-ups, but are still very much competitive and could go in either direction. So for Trump, we'll start off with his lone lean state in Texas. It's a left trending state. I know that Democrats had a really poor midterm in Texas outside of the House election results, in which they won. Henry Cuellar won his reelection by 13. Vincente Gonzalez beat Mayra Flores by 9. So overall, Democrats in Texas, they did lose the governor's race by 11, which was disappointing. But I think also, when you compare the House popular vote, which was about R plus 20 last year. When you compare that to previous midterm years, like in 2014, I think Republicans won the popular vote, in the House by 27. In 2010, it was like 30 points. So, you know, even though Democrats still have a long way to go in Texas, I still think that they're going to, continue to do better. And we have to remember that Texas, like Arizona and Georgia, is more Republican down ballot. And I think that that's, and Greg Abbott is also someone who has a lot more appeal than Donald Trump, even though he is a somewhat divisive figure. So Trump, I think, would do worse than 2020 in 2024 than he did in 2020. I think he'd win it by like 3, and that could potentially endanger Ted Cruz in the Senate race. But I think overall, it will stay red. I think that it's going to take a little bit more time for Democrats to, achieve, to make their dream of a blue Texas a reality. For Joe Biden, his first lean state is Michigan. It was a pretty good result for Democrats in 2022. Gretchen Whitmer, won her reelection by 11. Democrats swept all but one of the, swept 3 of the 4 competitive House seats. And, if they had funded Carl Marlinga against John James, he probably would have won, considering how close it was. And I don't think, Michigan is going to be an 11-point victory for Biden. I think that Trump, there are a lot of upsides to him with working class voters here in Michigan. But once again, the suburbs, were terrible for Republicans last year. I think that they would continue to drift away from Trump. And Grand Rapids will continue to drift to the left, and I think that overall, by it takes a lot for Republicans to win in Michigan. Trump, in 2016 only won Michigan by less than a quarter of a percentage point, and then he lost it by 3, which was respectable considering he was supposed to win it by or supposed to lose it by less. But I think he loses by like 4 this year, and I think Democrats are going to have there's potential for Trump to win Michigan, like in a best case scenario, but it's very hard because you have to do really well in the suburbs. You have to run up the margins with the white working class, and you have to kind of limit the leftward trends in Grand Rapids. And Trump, I don't think, has proven that he's going to be able to do that. Pennsylvania, once again, another really good state for Democrats these past midterms. Josh Shapiro won the governor's race by 15 points. Fetterman defeated Oz in the Senate race by 5, and Dems swept all 3 competitive House seats. Unless you count Brian Fitzpatrick, but that wasn't really that close. It was like a 10-point victory, which was respectable. But I think Pennsylvania is a state where it is it's a state the Democrats have a long history of doing well in midterms. And I don't think that Trump would lose by 5, and definitely not 15. But I think he'd lose by 2 to 3 points. Fetterman was supposed to lose that Senate race. Oz, was someone who was not the best candidate, but was there's a lot of the expectation was that Oz would win, and that was my prediction too. I thought that Oz would win, by a couple 100,000 votes. I thought it'd be pretty close. Um, you know, I thought it would be a really close race, but and it wasn't. I thought Fetterman had a chance. I think a lot of people wrote him off. I didn't. But I did not expect him to win by 5 points at that point in time. I think that a large part of Democrats' strong performance has to is can be credited to Doug Mastriano just bombing at the top of the ticket. But I also think that in general, Republicans are not doing well in the Philly suburbs. Oz, lost ground compared to Trump in, most of the counties. The only one he did better in was Chester County, and even then, that was, less than a point. And, he only, did like 0.4% better than Trump. And he did really bad in Scranton. He did not perform well in the Pittsburgh, suburbs, and he, lost Erie by 10. So I think, overall, Trump will not lose the state by 5 in 2024. But, I think Biden will continue, he'll do better in, the Philly suburbs. He'll, expand, he'll do really well in the Pittsburgh suburbs, although, in the Pittsburgh area, I don't think he'd do as well as Fetterman because, Fetterman, is from Pittsburgh, so, he obviously had that, he had that local appeal, his hometown appeal. But overall, I think that Pennsylvania is a state that is really hard for me to see Trump winning, and I think could go to Biden. And the state that's going to put Biden over the top here is Arizona. I think that looking at how bad Republicans performed in Arizona this year, they didn't even win. They only won two statewide races. That was this treasurer's race, and then I can't remember the other one. But besides that, Mark Kelly won his reelection by 5 points. A very strong margin. Katie Hobbs was able to defeat Carrie Lake despite not even really running that great of a campaign. Pretty much a non-existent campaign to be quite frank. And the Secretary of State race, Mark Fincham lost by 5 points to Adrian Fuentes. But yeah, I think that Arizona is a state that Republicans, still have a lot of room to succeed, a lot of potential to succeed if they run moderate candidates. I think that Arizona and Georgia, especially, which is also lean Dem, I'll get to that in a minute, but these two states, like Republicans that are normal, Trump does not, Trump's brand of conservatism is not normal to many of these voters. It is off putting, it is bad for the suburbs, and it is why his candidates lost. And so I think Biden would improve off of his margin in 2020. He wouldn't win it by 5 points, but I think he'd win it by like three. I thought, maybe two. I think it would, Arizona and Pennsylvania, I think will be pretty similar in margin. Georgia, I think will be a bit closer, but again, I think Georgia, more than Arizona, demonstrates that Republicans have a lot of, potential to succeed, even though, it's a left trending state, even though it's becoming more friendly to Democrats, with the Atlanta suburbs shifting left. But, overall, it's still a state that Republicans can succeed in. They won every statewide race, this past year besides the Senate race. And, that was, I think you can attribute that to Brian Kemp standing up to Trump and getting a lot of moderates to his side. And I think Herschel Walker was really just a terrible candidate for, Georgia. He was not someone that was good for the suburbs. Raphael Warnock was an exceptionally strong candidate, and I think that that's what propelled him to victory. And so I think Georgia's a state that, is left trending and will be hard for Republicans to win long term, but it's still a state that Republicans can win. They just need normal candidates. And Trump, they need traditionally conservative Republican. They like traditionally conservative Republicans, and Trump is not that. So I think, he'd lose it by two or three, maybe even four. I could see Georgia getting, pretty blue, compared to last time. So now we got the free toss-up states that will be decided by less than 1 percentage point. You know, and they will be Wisconsin, Nevada, and North Carolina. Biden has already won the election. He's at 287 electoral votes. Trump's at 219. And so, yeah, these are the closest states. These are the tilt states. They'll be decided by less than 1 point. So, yeah, we'll get into them. I think North Carolina will be a tilt Republican state. Biden could honestly win it. He could very well win it, but, like Nevada, it's kind of the inverse of Nevada where um, Democrats get close every year, but they almost never win it. Sherry Beasley did a really good, had a really impressive performance this year. Black turnout was down, which I think hurt her, you know, and I think Democrats long term will do pretty well in North Carolina, but I think going as far as to say that Trump is going to lose North Carolina just because he's lost support and he only won it by 1 point in 2020 is kind of ignoring just how stubbornly Republican the state is, how stubbornly or how stubborn it is, to vote for Republicans. Even if it is by a hair's margin, and I think it will be pretty close. I think it'll be less than a percentage point here. But I think I think I don't want to bet on Democrats winning North Carolina because that is something that has not gone very well. Although I do think Josh Stein will win the governor's race as of right now. And then the last two states, Nevada and Wisconsin, I'll give to Biden. I think, Trump will do better in Nevada. I think that, this would be an improvement from 2020. I think Catherine Cortez Masto, did well against Adam Laxalt. But Clark County still did trend right, and I think Trump would do decently well there. I think that he would lose ground in Washoe. And overall, I think that Biden would win it by, a similar margin to Cortez Masto. Um, Democrats had a pretty good result in Nevada this year, but they still lost the governor's race, and there's still evidence of Clark becoming a more Republican area, and that is going to shift the state right. And so I think that Nevada's the only true battleground state where I think that Trump would actually improve. Because Iowa and Ohio aren't really battleground states at this point, but they aren't safe. So yeah, I think Nevada would be like, just under a point victory for Biden. And then in Wisconsin, I think it would be, a similar result to 2020. Trump is good for the rural areas, for the driftless area, but I think he would do worse in the suburbs. It's a state that voted for Ron Johnson, and I get that, but it was only by 1 point. And Tim Michels lost that governor's race to Tony Evers by 3 points, and that was a very surprise victory. I had Evers losing by 3 points, so it was pretty much it was an exact flip. So I think that Wisconsin, Biden would do better in Milwaukee and Madison. I think he'd improve in the Madison suburbs and the Milwaukee suburbs, and probably do a little bit better in Green Bay. But Trump will probably keep the trends up in the driftless area. Although I think that overall Biden still ends up winning the state. And in the final map, we have Biden winning 303 electoral votes to Trump's 235 electoral votes. This is an exact copy, pretty much, not in terms of margin, but in terms of state outcomes. This is the exact same map as 2020. No states flip, and Biden gets another term. He is the oldest president to ever be reelected to a second term at 82 years old. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Sorry if it dragged on a little too long, but, yeah, these presidential election predictions are it's kind of hard to make them, more concise. It's, easier for Senate and governor's races because there's less to talk about. But yeah, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button so you can see more content like this, as well as the notifications bell. Share it with someone that share the video with someone that you think would like, that would enjoy this content. And yeah, check out my non-political channel, Interactive127, and my second channel, and my comrades channel, GrowlingZoo666. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all sometime soon, or I'll see y'all next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.